especially for Asian American?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think mainly the responsibility of carrying on tradition and family values is from there, because I mean, personally for my life, everything I've been forced on are my parental values and telling me is how you should act in social situations, how you should be to your elders. We do this on this day, we do that on that day. It's all those kind of things, and it is somewhat it's really hard to take in, because you also have to take in the traditions of this country, like what we do here. But then it's adding on to that load and just adding more responsibilities, more traditions to you, and it is somewhat hard to handle. Yeah.
And because that happens sometimes within a bubble, so all the things that we have to do in terms of Korean culture-wise, at least for me, that happened within a church context, because that's the time where I'm surrounded by all Koreans, and it was so I had to have a role that I had to play for that area, but yeah, in the wider American cultural aspect, it was oh, I don't really need this. So you have to learn how to manage different roles.
That's right.
And that could be conflicting, or that could also be really cool. But I think also that there's this, I don't know about now, but growing up, I always felt no matter what I did, I can just try as hard as possible. But there's always this perpetual foreigner kind of label. And I think that's for some people, they'll run away from it as fast as possible. And they'll be oh, okay, I don't want to do with anything Asianness then. And then there's the other people that are trying to balance that, and then other people that just fully embrace it. So it's this really interesting space.
Yeah, I think and that not belonging to either one, which is what Rachel's struggle is at the end, right? Because she doesn't feel like she's really American, right. But then she definitely doesn't fit in there either.
Right.
So where do you belong? And I think a lot of times then we feel like you have to pick a side, right? So either I'm just gonna be a banana, right, and I'm just gonna embrace that, or K-pop all day, right? That's all I'm gonna listen to, because I'm just gonna go to that side.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me in the movie was when Rachel's mom looks at her and is you look Chinese, your face looks Chinese, but here, and she points to her head, and then here to her heart, you're American, you're different.
How do we know? I was thinking about that, because you ever go to a really crowded place, like Disneyland or a park or something, and then you see people and you're like, oh yeah, they're from China. Oh, they're from, they haven't said anything, but just, I was oh, they're from Korea, right?
You know how I know? They'll be there and they'll open up a foil, and I'll look over and there's kimbap and then there's cup ramen.
We do that too. I do that too. That's called economics.
Actually, yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah, I think culture smells. I'll put it that way. It smells. Yeah, even you don't say anything, you do your best to be or Asian or American, but people can smell. That's how much is culture is part of our DNA.
Right.
So my wife and I went to Dongdaemun Sijang.
Oh yeah,
It's a major kind of outdoor, market, very famous. And we tried to buy, some blanket. They noticed immediately we are from America.
Really?
That is true.
How?
The hawkers, they always know.
Yeah. So both of us, speak, as you know, the Korean as primary language, right? First language. But still they able to notice, oh, 미국에서 오셨군요. So we pretty much,
No, you should have been no, I live right here. That's my apartment. You know what? I wonder if in the movie, if we were to elongate the movie to a 5-hour film, right? And we really dug deeper, and Rachel said something what do you mean by American? I wonder if Michelle Yeoh's character would be I mean white. Or so what does that mean? What does that mean for us to be American? I'm not sure we talked about that.
She mentions it a little bit at the very beginning when they meet, right? That you do things for your passions, yourself, as opposed to doing it for the family and for the community.
Right. And it's interesting. Does that mean that in pop culture they think that's inherently American to pursue your passion?
Yeah.
Is that what that means?
That's a normative.
Okay.
That's what is normal in America.
Yeah.
But point of movies that's not necessarily normal in Singapore or Asia.
Right.
That's why I think if we compare two mothers, Nick's mother and Rachel's mother, so Rachel's mother and also Nick's mother know that the Rachel is Americanized, but Rachel's mother is more accepting, embracing. But Nick's mother is more suspicious, given all power dynamics, right? Yeah. So that from my perspective, it's a major tension in the movie. Whether the person like Rachel, who is perfectly Asian in appearance, but carrying different value, different worldview, different way of, interacting with others, different idea of authority, right?
Because I think that is not just like, it's not just a whiteness, it's a white Americanness.
Yeah.
Because even between, like, I've heard conflicts between like Russians and like Americans, like to us, they both look white. It's like you both look white. But that like me versus we, like tension, which I feel like is even like for Rachel at the end, trying to figure out that it's not either or, right? It's not a I sacrifice everything of myself for the us, right? But then at the same time, it's not that everything's about me either.
But I had a lot of questions at the end of the movie. It's obviously very, the American type of happy ending, romance, triumph over tradition, all the way, right? But I was imagining what Rachel's or Nick's life would like after marriage.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially Nick caught between these two different, women or different powers.
Move to America and build a new empire.
But it's far more complicated, as you know. Okay? So for Nick's mother, the Rachel is alien element. If she comes in, she inevitably gonna change. Change that whole dynamics. That delicate relationship between mother, son, grandmother, her whole tradition could be changed. That's, I think, kind of fear she has. I think it resonated with, for example, the more conservative religious people in this country and also in Middle East, right? Why they are suspicious of the Western white values and individualism.
Right. And I think her journey of trying to discover that is contrasted with Gemma Chan's husband. Because Gemma Chan's husband is, in a sense, like Rachel, right? Although not American, right? He was lower class, he was working class, he was Navy. But his endeavor to just simply shed my individualness and embrace that traditionalist, right? I think the film is arguing like that's what leads him to that pressure, causing him to just crumble, right? Because he feels like his worth as a man, as Gemma Chan said, is like from these external things. And so, I think the question of is Rachel, like, if she's like, well, I'm just gonna embrace this Asianness, I think they would be the same thing.
We're kind of buying into a system where social impact, like that's positive, that doesn't bring about any kind of profit or power, is not necessarily looked upon as good. And so I wanted to take the conversation towards this interesting relationship between Confucianism that you mentioned before, and also like us buying into the system and saying, this is the game, these are the rules of the game. If I play these rules and I do this well, then I will be successful.
Yeah, the game's rigged. The game is rigged. The game is rigged because, we can do those things. And I think as Asian Americans right now, that cultural struggle is we've done these things, right? Because I think it's pretty well argued, like since the 90s, right? Asian Americans have been the best at playing that game. And yet, when you look at boardrooms, when you look at COOs, CEOs, when you look at media, right? Like, we got to see Asian Americans in leading roles because an Asian American wrote it, made it, and took less money to make it. So like all of those things are there in that, yeah, the game is rigged. So I think that there's that tension because sometimes in our older generation, they still believe in the system, right? I think so when they're kids, they send their kids to Hagwon and all these things because, oh, the system works. But we on the younger end are now saying, but the system doesn't work. So why are we still playing this game?
Yeah, I think that's the myth is that if you do all that, you're gonna win, but it always is still going to benefit the privileged way more than the non-privileged. And if you think about, I know Rachel comes from a single parent family and so she was supposedly poor or something like that, but this movie I think does cater towards more of a privileged view of what Asian American or Asian life is because I think like a good amount of Asian Americans in America are under poverty level and those stories are not on the table. And this whole minority myth that we bought into, I think that just gets swept under the rug, and we're like, oh, just work hard, and look at the Asians, look at them, they're not breaking the laws, and they're going to all the good schools. But like as you said, in terms of like wealth and the things that we were expecting from doing that, I don't think that's quite there.